Okay, I wanted to say there's one more little thing that I mentioned in the 1-3 video that I wanted to add on just to be complete about, because, we calculated the standard deviation by hand, which is not that important thing. What is important, as I said, is being able to state what the standard deviation means in context. And what the standard deviation means, what it means to interpret it in context, is to be able to state that it is the average amount the points vary from the middle, or vary from the mean, actually, is what it is. And so this is important, this is what's really important you're able to do, is to interpret the standard deviation in context, to be able to say that it is the average amount the points vary from the middle. So in this particular problem, it says that Martha has taken a job as a baker at a confectionery shop in Plano, Texas. She's in charge of baking all the cakes there. The mean number of cakes baked there each day is 20, with a standard deviation of 4. So the average, so if she's saying, well, how many cakes am I going to have to bake every day? Well, on average, it's 20. But she also needs to know the variability. I mean, if the average is 20, is it one day it's 30 and the next day it's 10? Or is it like one day it's 21 and the next day it's 19? Or is it one day it's 100 and then it's nothing for like 5 days? How do the numbers vary is an important thing to us. And so the standard deviation tells us the average amount it varies. In other words, the mean is 20, but we wouldn't be surprised at all that it's 24. That's one standard deviation above the mean. We wouldn't be surprised at all if it was 16. That's one standard deviation below the mean. So interpret the standard deviation in context is this. The number of cakes varies from the mean of 20 by 4 on average. So the average amount that the cakes vary from the middle is 4. That's what that is. And in general, it tells us, the standard deviation tells us what really unusual values are. And our rule of thumb that we are going to have, and this is our rule of thumb, if we go beyond like 2 or 3 standard deviations, it starts being really unusual. Okay. In other words, one standard deviation above the mean, that'd be 24. That's not unusual. But 2 standard deviations above the mean, that's 28. That would start to be unusual. We could tell Martha that it'd be unusual that if it gets beyond 28, you have to make more than 28 cakes. And that's if things are varying what we call normally. And we're going to define that in the next chapter. And so, but it's good to know this now. What would be an unusually high and unusually number of cakes for Martha to have to bake, assuming the numbers vary approximately normally? And we'll explain that more next chapter. But for right now, you just need to know anything beyond, I would say, 2 or 3 standard deviations. We'll say 3 at this point. We'll kind of define that better later. So what would be an unusually high and unusually low? An unusually high would be anything beyond 32. That would be 3 standard deviations above the mean. That'd be 12 above. And a low, anything 20 minus 12, which would be 8. Anything below 8. That would be really unusual to happen. So she can be really confident that the number of cakes she's going to have to bake is between 8 and 32. So and so that's it. That is just a little problem with standard deviation. That's all I wanted to say about that.